Trump's economic pressure on Canada isn't just about trade, it's about control. Could social media propaganda make Canadians question their independence? As economic struggles grow, some might see annexation as a solution. But at what cost? Is Canada really at risk of becoming the 51st U.S. state? This isn't just about trade, it's about the future of a nation. Back in December, when President Donald Trump called Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and joked about Canada being the 51st state, Trudeau thought it was just a joke. But over time, things got serious. By February, Trump was telling Trudeau that he didn't think the agreement that set the border between the US and Canada was valid and wanted to change it. He also wasn't happy about how lakes and rivers were shared between the two countries. Things escalated in February when Trump and Trudeau had two phone calls about trade. Trump's grievance list was lengthy from the get-go, ranging from Canada's dairy industry to taxes that made American products pricier. But what shocked Canadian officials even more was Trump's questioning of the border deal, which hadn't been touched since 1908. This was more than just about trade anymore. It was about the nature of the two countries' ties. Trump had already made it clear that he wanted to bring Canada to its knees through economic pressure. In a press conference before taking office, he was even asked if he planned to use military force to annex Canada. His answer? No need for that. He'd do it economically. At the same time, Trudeau was able to buy some time, persuading his U.S. counterparts to delay tariffs on Canadian goods for a month. However, the tariffs eventually landed in March, and Canada retaliated on its own. Just like that, the two nations had entered a trade war. Trump later eased things slightly by delaying most of the tariffs for another month, but the harm was already done. Canada is now taking Trump's words more seriously than ever. At first, his threats to alter the border and squeeze Canada's economy seemed tough. However, between tariffs and recent reports that U.S. officials have discussed excluding Canada from a crucial intelligence-sharing alliance, it is more than words. Some Canadian leaders think Trump is radicalizing Canada with the express purpose of making it easier to control. Whether that's truly his plan or just a side effect of his tough trade policies, one thing is clear: relations between the two countries are more strained than they've been in a long time. Is Canada really in danger of becoming the 51st state? At first, it was just a social media joke. People calling Canada the 51st state and Trudeau its governor. But as Trump kept bringing up border changes and shared waters in talks with Trudeau, Canadian officials stopped laughing. They started seeing it as something more serious. Things escalated when top U.S. officials began pushing the idea that the U.S.-Canada relationship was built on agreements that could easily be thrown away. Howard Lutnick, Trump's Secretary of Commerce, told Dominic LeBlanc, Canada's finance minister, that Trump is seriously considering ending key agreements. This included pulling Canada from the Five Eyes intelligence sharing group, canceling the Great Lakes Accords, and even rethinking military cooperation. Some United States officials, such as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, attempted to assuage fears by presenting the idea of severing military ties as extreme. But among many people in Canada, that assurance didn't hold much water. In conversations with Trump's team, he and other officials kept hearing the same concerns, making it difficult to dismiss as mere talk. The uncertainty had Canadian leaders fearful of what might follow. Now, experts warn the real danger isn't just policies, it's influence. Former Canadian intelligence officials say the U.S. might try to shift public opinion in Canada through social media. Platforms like X, owned by Elon Musk, could spread messages making Canadians more open to U.S. influence, similar to interference by countries like China or Russia. As tensions grow, Canadians are left wondering if this is just Trump's tough negotiating style, or if the U.S. is truly aiming to weaken Canada. Either way, the relationship between the two neighbors feels more strained than it has in years. Could economic struggles make some Canadians support annexation? Even though most Canadians strongly oppose the idea of joining the US, some, especially young Canadians struggling financially, might see it differently. Neil Bisson, a former intelligence officer, warns that economic hardship could be a vulnerability exploited by others. When people are worried of affording food or housing, they might be more open to the idea that American citizenship could solve their problems. Beeson notes there are already individuals in Canada who could push this narrative, suggesting joining the US is the only way to escape financial struggles. Experts pointed, if Canada's economy fall, more people may turn to annexation. Ward Elcock, another former intelligence official, believes most Canadians would never agree, but some might lose hope if conditions deteriorate. The real concern is that desperation could lead some to see annexation as the only way out. Disinformation and propaganda spread through social media can be powerful, and intelligence experts warn that if people hear something enough times, they might start to believe it. Dick Fadden, a former intelligence official, says that if this talk about Canada joining the US keeps going for years, even those who don't agree now might begin to doubt their stance. To fight back, Canada needs to be smarter about using social media to make sure the truth is heard. Fadden believes that just sending politicians to negotiate in Washington isn't enough. Canada must also work harder to counter the false messages spreading online. One of the most effective ways to prevent people from succumbing to these ideas is to support those in need. Neil Bisson says the Canadian government should provide more support to those harmed by tariffs. If Canadians are financially safe, they will not easily be manipulated by propaganda. Telling them that the only way out is through absorption into the US absent that support, an economic downturn could drive more people to consider annexation in a favorable light. There's also concern that the US government might secretly support pro-annexation groups in Canada to make it seem like many Canadians want to join the US. Fadden points out that America has the resources to do this, but the big question is whether they will actually try. He believes Canada should keep an eye on money movements and potential election interference to catch any outside influence before it spreads. However, using spies to influence Canadians wouldn't be easy. The US has rarely operated its intelligence services in Canada, and Canadian security agencies already have systems in place to catch foreign threats. Ward Elcock, another former intelligence official, says, if the Americans tried anything, there's a high chance they would get caught before they could do much. However, with Trump, things are different. He doesn't rely on secret intelligence tricks. He prefers to say things loudly himself, making his messages even harder to ignore. Is Canada really in danger of being taken over by the US? Some might say that if you hear a lie often enough, you may come to believe it. That's what scares provocateurs about the idea of Canada allying with the US. Warns one former top intelligence official, Dick Fadden, who says that if you spread these ideas for long enough and louder while doing so, even the skeptics might doubt themselves in the end. To counter this, Canada must use social media more effectively to ensure the truth is heard. Simply sending politicians to negotiate isn't enough. Canada must actively combat false information before it takes root. Financially struggling Canadians could be more susceptible to the idea that joining the US is the solution to their problems. Neil Bisson suggests that supporting those hurt by trade issues is crucial. If Canadians feel financially secure, they'll be less likely to fall for misleading arguments. Without such support, economic hardships might make annexation seem appealing to some. However, covert US operations in Canada would be risky. The US rarely uses its intelligence services there, and Canadian agencies are well equipped to detect foreign threats. Another former intelligence official, Ward Elcock, doubts any effort by the US would remain hidden for long. But Trump takes another track. He doesn't use covert tactics. only public pronouncements, which makes his messages less easy to ignore. And Trump's reshaping of the US government only adds complexity to the situation. Though many professionals in US intelligence still see value in the Canada relationship, Elcock cautions that replacing them with Trump loyalists will only heighten risks. Fadden says prolonged economic pressure could eventually bring Canada to its knees, even without military action. Some experts theorize that Trump is fixating on Canada, given its proximity and relative weakness. Some think that he does this to make Canada economically dependent on the US, and that will avoid military actions. Whatever the reason, Canada now faces a pressing challenge, and its response will define its evolution for decades. Is Canada's independence at stake, or can it stand the pressure?